wrote an article today. I very rarely go live and write an article in the same day, but this is something that is just very important that I just felt Holy Spirit. I even prayed about it before I got on just to make sure that it was urgent enough to do this right here tonight before my vacation. So I had a what I call a vision. It's where I see or sense things and hear God speak. I don't see them in the natural, very, very rarely. I have seen sometimes in the natural, but it's more seen in the spirit. And the word is ice cream. And I know that sounds a little strange, but I want to give you a little bit of background and then tell you what God was speaking to me to tell everybody else is it's not just recently, but more recently than not, a lot of leaders in the faith, a lot of Christian church leaders, and some are not even that big, have been invited to the White House. And if you're plugged in and listening to people on the like YouTube or whatever, a lot of these faith leaders have been talking about, oh yeah, I've been invited to the White House. I've been talking with people, and they all come back with this like great news. And at first, like it gave me a lot of hope and optimism. They're saying things like, "Guys, I know you don't see it now, but the people, the administration, it's never been like this before. The administration is working on bringing revival and restoration of Christian values to America." And the word that I got in my spirit is that ice cream. The White House has been throwing these big ice cream parties for these church leaders to come and speak and to make them think that there's going to be this massive revival through our government for Christianity. And basically God has told me that it's a deception. And what I mean by that is, like, if you think about ice cream, this is what God was telling me. I was actually eating ice cream, which is my favorite snack. So I'm speaking a little bit metaphorical here. Don't take this personally. I have weight to lose myself, but ice cream is sweet to the taste, but when consumed too much, it dulls your senses. It makes you fat and lazy. I'll be the first to admit that when I eat too much ice cream, it makes me just cathartic and want to lay on the couch and not do anything, like the sugar rush. And so what God is saying is that the White House has been smart, and they've been throwing these big ice cream parties by feeding our church leaders what they want to hear. And in exchange, our church leaders are telling them what they want the Christians to hear. And then coming back and telling their churches and the Christian community everything that we want to hear to pacify us. And I heard God say that if you think about it, I heard God say that be careful for the deception, because ice cream, what's ice cream made out of? Made out of one of its main ingredients is milk. That anyone who is still drinking on spiritual milk is at risk of being deceived. God said he's here to give us, he's wanting to feed us meat right now. We need to be eating spiritual meat. That means when a baby's born, they don't eat meat. Not until they're like, my daughter didn't really start eating meat until she was 2 or 3 years old. And we need to be maturing in our faith and eating spiritual meat, or we will be at risk of falling under this deception. And here is so a prophetic gift is never meant to drive fear. It's never meant to scare people. So I'm not here to scare you with this, but God told me that the White House, the administration, our government is working with a God, but they're using our language and inviting our church leaders to get the language that we want to hear because they're working with the counterfeit God of this world. Okay, we already really know that anyway, because our war is not against flesh and bone, but against powers and principalities, and the powers and principalities of the nations talks about in the book of Psalms, "O nations, why you conspire against me?" So this is nothing new. There's nothing new under the sun. It's just I want to come on here and speak truth so that you will know that if you're hearing, oh, peace, peace, and oh, just right around the corner, all these good times are coming, everything's being fixed, everything's being resolved, we're going back to our Christian values, our Christian roots. We're not. We're not. And we have to be wide awake, eyes open and in the word, eating spiritual meat so that we don't fall for the ice cream party. And what's is just super crazy about this word is I've been reading more and more about ICE, which is the Customs and Border Patrol people, ICE. And this is coming from someone who was raised very, very conservative, very far right. I'm moderate now. I do believe in borders. I'm not saying people should come here illegally to quote unquote milk our system. That's not what I'm saying. But ICE has been going into churches and detaining people, including people who are here legally as political refugees. And as part of this word, I believe what we're going to see is ICE is going to be the arm, the militant arm used for whatever is going on from a if people don't fall in line. We're going to see ICE more and more go into churches that don't fall in line with whatever the administration's doing and not just go after immigrants, but they're going to start going after political and religious church dissidents, the people who don't fall in line, who see past the deception. That's the word that was put on my heart. I prayed about this before jumping on. It was just such an urgent message of getting it out there. I noticed some people joined a little bit late, so I'll recap it real quick. I had a vision as I was eating ice cream, and the vision is about ice cream. And it is our church leaders over the past couple years and more recently have been invited to the White House. And what's crazy is some of these church leaders are not like the biggest church leaders in the world. In fact, some of them will say, like, if you're on YouTube, I don't want to drop any names because it's not about names. Because I don't think these church leaders, some of them are spirit led. I don't think these church leaders are evil or bad, and I'm not blaming them. Okay, because I like ice cream. We can all fall for ice cream, right? For free stuff, and essentially, the White House has been throwing these ice cream parties for our church leaders and telling them the things that feeding them the things that they want to hear, and in exchange they're learning from our church leaders the things that we as a Christian community want to hear from the White House, and they're going to start throwing us ice cream parties saying more and more of the things that we think we want our government to hear, but doing it for ulterior bad motives, for their counterfeit God to deceive us. And I think there's going to be free stuff. We might see like checks. I saw something in the news today about potentially getting like a $1,000 Trump account or something like that, like in COVID, where they gave us money. I think we're going to start seeing ice cream being handed out to help pacify what's going on in our government and to deceive people. And ice cream is made out of milk. And the people who are still drinking the spiritual milk are the most at risk of being deceived, because God told me he wants us to start eating meat, and we need to be grounded in the word. We need to be eating the spiritual meat that he's feeding us so that we're not deceived by whatever it is going on. On top of that, ICE, which if you seen in the news, has been going into churches more and more, and I think over time ICE is going to be used as the militant arm of our government to go into churches, not just for quote unquote illegal immigrants, but people who are here on asylum legally that they don't want, and also for political and religious dissidents who are not deceived and who don't fall in line with whatever the administration is trying to push right now. So I don't know all the ins and outs. I think more of this will be played out. I do trust God to give me more information, and I will continue praying on this, and will add to this word as I gain more revelation. I also think that perhaps there's a link. I had a prophetic word. I wrote about uh, a wealth restoration, something happening in wealth redistribution of wealth from the wicked to the righteous, starting sometime in mid July, which is like starting next week. and I stand by that word. I believe that's gonna come to pass wholeheartedly, and I think that this whatever's going on in our government, with the floods, with ICE, with what I just said on the ice cream word, I think it could all be interrelated, so stay tuned, stay in prayer, stay prayed up. Megan, thank you so much for chiming in here. I've heard, similar things about what from other people who are plugged into the military and government. You know, I think there was a lot of this going on with a lot of symbolism with what the president was saying when the Israel and Iran was even worse than it is now. And he called it the 12-day war. 12 is very symbolic. And then right after we get this whatever it is, it's not really a peace treaty but a ceasefire. We see, what is it, 4 1 in 1,000 year flood events in 4 different cities in the United States right after the ceasefire, and very close to when I got this word on uh, wealth being stored up from the wicked and being given to the righteous, as well as tonight's word on the whole ice cream thing. So just keep your eyes open, be praying for each other. Let's be lifting this community up in prayer. I'll be lifting you, everyone here, in prayer. And please, if you get a moment, share this with somebody. Don't share this with just anybody, but share this with someone that you know is going to get it. That's all I really ask. Please share this with someone who needs to hear it or who's going to understand and be like, "Yep, that's spot on," because we do need to try to get the word out to people who are going to be wise with it. We don't want to throw our pearls of swine, but we wanted to give it to people who are going to be wise with it and to people that we know will listen and it can help. So I thank you all for jumping on here. I know it's late on a Saturday. I love you all. I'll be praying for everybody, and we'll definitely add on to this as the Lord gives me more insight.